1984, a book by the same author was published on Islam and the West, and then the Islamic Declaration was published again in 1990. It is well known that it states that there can be no peace and coexistence between the Islamic faith and non-Islamic faiths. This is repeated many times in all these books and publications. At the Bosnian and Herzegovinian Assembly session on the 21st of December 1991, Izetbegovic said that he was willing to sacrifice peace for the sake of a sovereign Bosnia and Herzegovina. There was mass mobilization and civil war started, with abundant financial help arriving from Saudi Arabia, Iran, and other Islamic countries. After this, many mujahideen arrived. On the 6th summit of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, held on the 9th of December 1991, before the war was fully developed and before Bosnia and Herzegovina was recognized, support was given to their brothers in faith, support for the creation of the first Islamic state in Europe. Even today, Bosnia and Herzegovina does not have a majority Muslim population. Not only was there substantial financial help, but Alija Izetbegovic was feted and honored at the Islamic conference held in Jeddah from the 1st to the 2nd of December 1991. They also extended their concern to two areas in Serbia, to Kosovo and the area of Raška, or as they call it, Sanjak. The first holy warriors, the mujahideen, arrived from Afghanistan, Lebanon, Morocco, and Pakistan, armed with weapons sent by the CIA to the rebels in Afghanistan. A group of 400 members of Hezbollah arrived in Sarajevo as military instructors. Following the tradition from World War II, of a joint action under the auspices of Nazi Germany against the democratic coalition to which the then Yugoslavia belonged, Tudjman and Izetbegovic, the two leaders of the rebels, signed an agreement stating that the armed forces of the Croatian Defense Council would be part of the unified armed forces of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This was followed by the expulsion of Serbs from areas under the control of Muslim forces. Tens of thousands of people were expelled from Mostar, 2,000 from Goražde, and so on. As happened in Croatia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, allegedly retired American officers were sent to be instructors of the Muslim army. Combat operations developed and moved from the north toward the south, and they were finally transferred to the territory of Serbia, that is, to Kosovo. The pattern along which the destruction of Yugoslavia was planned, Kosovo being the last phase, is very simple. Reliance was placed on paramilitary rebel forces, criminals, and on Kosovo, the narco mafia, as well as terrorist forces. During the time of Croatia and Serbia, the legitimate force was the JNA, and later on the Army of Yugoslavia. There was open aggression on the remainder of Yugoslavia, Serbia and Montenegro. Tens of thousands of bombs were dropped and various projectiles with depleted uranium, and 5 to 6 times more poison was dropped than was the case in Hiroshima. All this happened in the aggression against Yugoslavia by the NATO pact. The involvement of the West, primarily the Vatican and Germany, was evident from the very beginning. Donald Horowitz, the well-known American theoretician, presented arguments in his study on ethnic and national conflicts that they they take on their worst form, war, when they gain international support. And this is precisely what happened on the territory of Yugoslavia. The war on this territory was a synchronized activity by secessionist forces and external forces who, in preparing the bloodshed and fueling the bloodshed, implanted into Yugoslavia Ustasha extremists and Nazis, Islamic fundamentalists and Albanian terrorists, whose role was to be the detonator for the outbreak of the conflict. The external forces in the initial phases acted behind the scenes, supplying the secessionists with arms and money and infiltrating mercenaries into the country. The final destruction of Yugoslavia was perpetrated through institutional deceptions. In the final act from the final document from Helsinki, the USA and other countries promised to respect the integrity of all the countries in the area, all the states, and said that they would refrain from any activities against the territorial integrity and unity and independence of every signatory country. This was signed in Paris in 1990. Only a year after this, the international community acted openly on the political scene as the main force for the destruction of Yugoslavia. On Brioni, on the 7th of July 1991, a declaration was signed on the peaceful resolution of the conflict in the SFRY. Relying on these documents, which I have mentioned, the European community promised to seek a peaceful solution and to respect the territorial integrity of Yugoslavia, which was the only legally protected entity, which actually gave it the mandate to mediate in this conflict. The whole process started from there were several possible solutions that were proposed, and concessions were proposed that could be relied on. Instead of all this, Lord Carrington, at a meeting on the 18th of October 1991, set out an ultimatum, and there was no alternative to the disappearance of Yugoslavia. This was the model applied by Hitler in 1941. Nazi values won the day. The right to the destruction of a state, to secession, was given priority over preserving a state and the right to preserve a state, a member of the UN. The paradox is that the right that was given to the secessionists in Yugoslavia is denied, for example, to the Irish by the British, and so on. Let us remember that there was a time when Serbian fighters fought together with the Allies in World War II, and that then the troops of the so-called independent state of Croatia, as well as some forces from Bosnia, also then within the independent state of Croatia, fought on the side of the Nazi forces. At that time, the well-known Handjar division from Bosnia was sent to France as a part of the convicts unit, and there they committed unprecedented crimes. Let us go back to Carrington's document, which was the first blow against the sovereignty of Yugoslavia. This is an evident deception